Hello everyone and welcome to the Stretch of Identity podcast. I'm your host Shelly Rabang, and this podcast is about first or second generation Canadian entrepreneurs and basically story unfolding and sharing their story on how they got to where they are and anything that they want to talk about. So today I have my guest Jackie. Hello. So Jackie is the owner of Tito Boy's restaurant, as well as, this is super exciting, I didn't realize, the first female president of the Manitoba Filipino Business Council. Amazing. We love that. So tell me, I want to get started right away. Tell me about your upbringing, what area that you grew up in, things like that.
Yeah, for sure. So while I live in the South now, which is where our restaurant is, I actually grew up in the West End, so deep inner city, right down the street from Tindahan Kamayan Sargent. So lived in the core and got to grow up around a lot of our double line, which was really fun.
Did you, because I saw, like, obviously that you're the part of the Filipino Business Council, but did you start right away in business when you went to school, or?
No, I went through 1,000,001 different career paths, and it's funny because I do a lot of talks with high schools, and I always tell young people it's okay not to know what you want to do because life will take you exactly where you need to be. Growing up, I actually wanted to go into film.
Yeah.
And so I went. Yeah. I started my university journey at the U of W taking film studies, and then quickly realized that just wasn't the right fit. I took some business courses, ended up going to U of M for computer science, and then took a year off. I went everywhere. And
I love that.
Yeah, and then I ended up applying for the Creative Communications program at Red River College and learned about a career in public relations, and I ended up spending the next 15 years of my career in the nonprofit sector supporting some really great charitable organizations across our community. And while I was finishing off my university degree, I ended up finishing my Bachelor's of Commerce while I was working. I ended up doing a bunch of other volunteer stuff.
Oh my gosh.
All in between.
I was actually gonna say, so I used to work for St. John Ambulance, and I was the therapy dog program coordinator.
Oh, that's so cool.
And I'm pretty sure I was trying to start a sponsorship program within their program. And I'm pretty sure the first time I heard of you was when I was with them and when you were as the community investment.
At TELUS. Yes.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Is that the one? So that's the one that you've been doing for like 10, 15 years?
I worked actually for a few other nonprofits before that in the healthcare sector.
Yeah.
And then I had my first baby, Ray, who's no longer a baby. She's 9 now. And when I was going back to work, there was this really great program that was just starting here in Manitoba that was called the Community Board with TELUS, and we gave out $500,000 in grassroots grants to local nonprofit organizations that were supporting youth-based programs. So I'm not surprised that's when we first connected.
Yeah. What got you into that? Like, what led you towards like working in that? And because I also started in a non-for-profit.
Yeah.
I don't know how and why I started into it. I'm pretty sure it's because I wanted to, just the fact that you're helping people is what got me into it. So would you say that's what kind of kept you in that profit or in that sector?
Yeah, like I think inherently a big part of our Philippine culture is this idea of servitude and selflessness. And those were values that were deeply ingrained within me very early on with my family.
Right.
They were, as most Filipino families are, the most generous people. And I was an only child, and my mom had me when she was 40, so she really put all of her eggs, quite literally all of her eggs in one basket.
I love it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, she was quite the boss. She worked
Nice.
incredibly hard.
That gives me hope, girl.
Yeah.
Now I'm not on a timeline
No,
for having
you
a
don't
baby.
need to.
Oh my goodness, I've been on such a
Yeah.
mind thing about having a kid at that age.
You can spend your entire life working on your career, and like you can still be an incredible mother later on in life, and she really was that. And she instilled a lot of those values of just giving as much as you can for the greater good. And so that's how I ended up getting involved in the nonprofit sector. And it's funny because when I had my second daughter, when I went on my second mat leave, I always have these major career changes every time I have a baby. But that's when we started talking about starting the restaurant. And Tito Boys, even though it is a business, we really operate it like a community in a lot of ways. And so it's servitude in a different form.
Right.
Being able to give back to our Kamayan in a way where we can celebrate our identity and kind of building intercultural and intergenerational connections.
Right.
So while I wasn't in the nonprofit sector when we started the business, it still felt so much like it because community was at the heart of everything that we did.
Right. What made you decide to open one up on the south end of the city, like a Filipino restaurant over there?
Yeah. So there's a little bit of backstory on the restaurant. It was my dad's lifelong dream to open up a restaurant ever since he was a little boy. And yeah, he used to like cook in the kitchen with his mom, and that brought him to so much joy. And when he immigrated from the Philippines to Winnipeg after he married my mom in the 80s, one of his first jobs was as a dishwasher. So hospitality was kind of the start of his career here and the end.
Right.
He worked a lot of different jobs. He ended up going to culinary school in the 90s and worked in the sector for a number of years, but he ended up leaving it for a while just because it wasn't practical for him with a young family at the time. But it wasn't until COVID that...
COVID's like that.
Yeah, COVID, just, we're all
100%.
renewing our self-identities over COVID.
Exactly.
It was a funny time because he actually opened up a restaurant remotely with his family in the Philippines over COVID. And he was pretty close to the end of his career. He was working, he worked 16 years as a healthcare aide at the time. And I just saw the spark light up in his eyes again. And I was just like, Dad, you really love this, don't you? Yeah. And so when I was on mat leave, we actually ended up building that business plan together.
Oh, wow. Aww.
Yeah. And
awesome.
yeah, so it was literally the 2 months after he retired as a healthcare aide that we opened up the restaurant. And the opening of the restaurant came literally a week after I was supposed to come back from my mat leave.
Oh, wow.
So
Oh, my goodness.
it was a crazy time. And so when we were building the business plan, there was a lot of thought that went into where we could set up the shop. And again, I grew up in the West End, but ended up moving further and further south as the years went on. And I just felt like it was such an underserviced area for our community. And there are a lot of Philippine business owners in the South End. I mean, this space included. But there just wasn't that type of very obvious representation, which food does. Food is a gateway into culture and community. And there wasn't a Filipino restaurant in this part of the city. So we did market analysis. And when we started doing the research, we had found that the Philippine community is actually the second largest ethnocultural group in the area that we were thinking of setting up in. And I'm like, this just makes so much sense. Even though it's not as visible as the north or the west end of the city, our Kababayan are here. They want food that feels like home.
Yeah, exactly.
And a lot of people, don't necessarily want to drive 30 or 40 minutes out of their area, even though it's easy to get around the city. A lot of people end up staying in their own, little communities. And so we wanted to make sure that that was something that not only our community could experience, but we can introduce to other communities as well.
Right.
And so when we opened up the shop, it really was quite cool to be able to see not just Philippine people in the space, but non-Philippine folks who are just deeply curious about our culture and our
Yeah.
food, and we do Kamayan spreads, so
Oh, no way.
yeah,
Oh, that's awesome.
So we always kind of explain it to non-Philippine folks as like, basically this is how our ancestors ate in pre-colonial times, being able to have the food on banana leaves, and we eat with our hands, which is the most practical tool, really.
Yeah, 100%.
Don't need a spoon and a fork. Those are colonial constructs.
Even that though too.
Yeah.
I did not know at all that a spoon and fork was majority a Filipino thing.
Yeah.
Until I started eating with my non-Filipino friends, and they would comment on it. I was like, what do you mean? Like, and I was in high school when I first found out. I was like, what do you mean? Like, you eat with a knife and fork? Like, what do you mean?
I'm like, that's what the side of the spoon is
Yeah,
for.
exactly. You get so much more rice when you hold a spoon. What do you mean?
Why are you eating rice with a fork? It
It falls through. Especially jasmine rice. Like, what?
It's funny because we do only give a spoon and a fork at the restaurant, and like
Yeah.
the non-Philippine folks are just like, where is my knife? I'm like, you can get it upon request, but you don't need it. I promise you.
Try it out.
You can get through this meal without one.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
So what would their reaction be? Yeah, what would their reaction be when you would do the, what is it? Kamayan?
Kamayan, yeah.
Oh my gosh, Kamayan.
People absolutely love it.
Mhm.
It's just a really great way for folks to have a low barrier entry point into culture.
Right.
When they're starting to learn about the Philippine community, and our staff does an incredible job just kind of explaining a little bit of that ancestry and history that comes with this pre-colonial way of communal eating. And
Right.
what's really great about it too is that because you're eating with your hands, nobody's on their phones, nobody wants to
Yeah.
get rice on their screens.
Exactly.
So they're like fully present at the dinner table.
Yeah.
And then they learn how to actually like eat with their hands. Like the idea of getting a little bit of everything, pushing it down is very bizarre to some people. It's very foreign.
Mhm.
But once you do it for the first time, you're like, this is
Makes
magical.
more sense,
Why
yeah.
haven't I done this before?
Exactly. Well, and the interesting thing is like I've come to realize like the more people I meet and the more the more they invite me to eat like their cultural food, it's like eating with their hands is such a normal thing.
So many cultures do it.
Yeah, so many newcomers, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm trying to think back if like I've never seen, other than like maybe barbecue, like burgers and all that kind of jazz. But that's also their version
Yeah.
of eating with their hands, right?
Yeah.
So, that's very interesting.
Yeah, like the cultural context of the way that we eat and what we eat is just so fascinating, and I think that's a really big part of why I was so interested in opening up the restaurant too, because
Right.
it just gave us a chance to talk about the Philippine cultural identity in a way that was very accessible, I think, for a lot of people.
Let's sit up for a moment. I'm just gonna get a bit of a stretch in your neck area as well.
Sure.
That's I did not think about, like I guess I'm very, what's the right word? I would not think that food would be a gateway to our own culture, right? And it's interesting saying that out loud now because I do see it as a gateway towards other cultures, but when it comes to our own, it's not a big deal, right? So, interesting. So would you say, like your client base now at the restaurant, are you finding that there is a big difference, like ratio-wise, in Filipinos versus non-Filipinos?
Yeah, it's funny because during the daytime, during the weekdays, it's usually non-Filipino folks that live a little bit closer to us. They're from the surrounding communities. And of course we are seeing Philippine folks come in too, but on the weekends, that's really when you see our community come out and show up because they're coming from all corners of the city.
Exactly, yeah.
They have time to come in, so that's kind of the breakdown. The weekends you'll usually see a much larger Philippine crowd there, but overall, like Filipinos will always come out and support, and the community has been amazing. And like I really like what you said about how unpacking our own cultural fare is different than experiencing other cultures because it is so deeply and innately ingrained within us.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just something that there's just so much to unpack there because when we talk about food, it's something that I take like an enormous amount of pride in today, but it wasn't always the case. You know, I think that there is a lot of shame growing up with food that's not familiar to other people, especially, you know, when you're living in a community that's more closed-minded.
Exactly.
Yeah, they don't like the smell or the look or the taste of these things that they're not familiar with.
Yeah, and they see it as a negative, right?
Exactly.
All right, with that being said, let's pause.
Sure.
And let's transition over to the couch. Okay, so you slightly mentioned when we were having the stretch was like the hardships that we had growing up and kind of having to suppress our own cultural identity.
Yeah.
And you responded in one of the questions that one of your teachers, being in French immersion, you mentioned, being in French immersion, how that's crazy, how one of your teachers said not to speak your language. And that's like overall, or like how did that even come about? Like,
It's so interesting because it wasn't just a teacher, it was our principal.
oh,
Yeah. And so I was enrolled in a French immersion school in the inner city. And one of the initial meet and greets that my parents had with me and the principal was a situation where they explicitly told my parents that you shouldn't speak Tagalog or Bisaya, which are the two dialects that my parents speak at home,
right.
because it will confuse me as I learn a second language. So basically, it was, you know, whether it was intentional or not, this act of assimilating me into the Canadian context and prioritizing the learning of
Right.
a different language above like our cultural, our ancestral languages. And at the time, because my parents just wanted me to have the, you know, the greatest opportunity to succeed, and, you know, me being a young child, it just didn't really register in my mind that it was going to be harmful in the long term. But because of that, my parents didn't speak Tagalog to me in my household. And so I got to learn French, which was, you know, I guess helpful in some contexts.
Yeah.
But I can't speak fluent Tagalog even until today. I watched a lot of TFC
Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
20s
Yeah.
trying to pick up the language again. And we actually even do Tagalog lessons at the restaurant.
Oh,
so,
nice. Oh,
yeah,
cool.
like we're trying to reclaim that part of our identity, but it's hard. It's hard when you do it later in life. So it's something that, like for my 9-year-old and my 3-year-old kids, like I want to try to be more intentional with introducing the language and just the overall culture and our history back into their upbringing, because it just wasn't something that was prioritized, you know, for me as a kid. And what it ended up doing was, like, it was this like little droplet, this tiny little inkling of shame,
Right.
that inherently was just registering in my mind as like, okay, I shouldn't connect with my Filipino-ness because it's not going to help me succeed in this society, this Canadian context. And so growing up, you know, like I would, and even though we had a fairly multicultural school, like I would bring Filipino food, you know, my favorite dinuguan, chocolate meat, and
even as a kid, that was your favorite?
oh, I loved it.
Maybe it's just because we got chocolate meat.
I didn't know it was not chocolate meat until much later on in life. And but you know, like you bring these things that I look back on now with like fondness, but at the time, like you get a lot of, again, it feels shameful because people look at your food, they're like, why does it smell so weird? Why does it look so gross? And so, you know, you want to tuck that part away of you, and like, you know, your parents want you to wear like, you know, cute Filipino shirts and, you know, like barongs or Filipiniana from back home, and you're like, I don't want to wear that. Like, I don't want to be made fun of.
Susie isn't wearing that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, I just want to wear like my Adidas tearaway pants.
Yeah, exactly. The orange one that I very much love all the time, right? Well,
So yeah, like it was just like the first domino that kind of pushed all of the other ones in quick succession, where it just was repressing a lot of what it meant to be a Philippine person. And most of my family was that way too. Like, I think it was kind of the context of like, all of our parents just wanted us to be able to have the best chance of succeeding, and that's what they thought was the right thing to do.
Exactly.
Looking back, of course, you know, it really robbed us of a lot of opportunities, but it just came with the best intentions, but didn't have the best outcome.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is that they're newcomers to Canada, right? So it's like for them, they are, reset. As newcomers to Canada, in my perspective, all they're worried about is not being too much in a society that they're new in, right? And never mind like not having, like, yes, they speak English in the Philippines, but like obviously not fluently. And it's interesting. Oh, I appreciate you saying like the whole Diniguan thing, because I didn't make my first like real Filipino friend up until grade 5.
Really?
Like grade 5. And even then it was like at the end of the year when I was like, oh, you're a Filipina, right? But the one thing that I remember, a very significant story I have when I was young, and now that I mention it, I believe that was definitely like my domino effect, was I was walking down the street with my Caucasian friend, and then she asked me, she was like, hey, like, what's your mom and dad's first names? And I was just like, Laura and Pat. And then she's like, okay. And then she saw them outside, so she's like, hi, Laura and Pat. And then I'm like, ooh, like you know, like, I don't know.
Tita and Tito.
Yeah, exactly. And then when I came home, like, my parents got very mad. And they're
Really?
like, they're like, why, like, they're like, why did your friends call us by our first name? That's disrespectful. And so for me, I'm like, whoa, okay, like, I don't really know what's respectful, what isn't, because I've never called anyone by their first name. I was never taught that, right? And later on, again, I remember I lived only a block away from my elementary, but I remember always wanting to just eat at home because of the food that I had, because I didn't get that marshmallow puff that, again, little Susie had, right? And so it's so interesting that I really appreciate when you said that was a domino effect that kind of pushed down the identity, because I never saw it in that way, right? I always saw it as restricting and then as something that I hid, but not in the domino effect. And that's why for myself, like as a 32-year-old now, right? But when I opened my business last year, only through opening my business is what's connecting me back to being Filipina, right?
I love it. I think that's so special.
It's so interesting.
Yeah.
I'm on a whole journey, girl.
we all are. We all are.
Exactly, right?
Yeah. But I think there's never a wrong time and place to start that journey. And some people, like, they recognize it super early on, or they are never disconnected, and that's incredible. But for the most part, a lot of people that I know that are part of even the Philippine business community, it doesn't happen until much, much later on.
Right.
And for me, like, similarly, it wasn't until my adulthood, when I was just graduating from creative communications, the president of the Manitoba Filipino Business Council at the time had reached out and asked if I wanted to volunteer there. The publisher of the Filipino Journal had also asked me to start writing, and I was like, oh, cool, Filipino people in business?
Yeah.
I didn't know that
Sign
we
me
were
up.
business owners. So fancy.
Yeah.
And, but like, it just opened up like this whole world of our community that I did not know was so tapped in. And it helped me realize that, like, we do not need to cap our capacity and follow what the script, you know, the traditional script is for us to fall into like these very secure and stable roles, whether it be in healthcare or in like service. They're like, we need to be able to build our own legacies, and as business owners, that is really the best opportunity to do that. We don't want to build other people's legacies and write that for them. We want to be able to tell our stories, and you're doing that by building your own business. And I think that is incredible.
We're all doing it.
Yeah.
We're all doing it, right? And that's what I love about this podcast is, like, I'm hearing so many stories that are so relatable, and even in a sense when it's not relatable to me, I know so many people that I've spoken to already that have a similar story to this other person, right? So, but also I would definitely say one of the driving force of me doing this is the Mabuhay district that you guys are doing, because I didn't know that world existed in business. And so when I first found out that it exists, I was like, hey, how do I get involved, right? What does that mean for me as a business owner? How can I plug myself into here, right? And whether it's opening up a studio or even just like volunteering or things like that, right? So I want to say thank you, because it's like I'm gonna cry. But actually, right? Like it's not a part of me that I grew up with, and so having people that look like me, people who understand my cultural background, people who also relate to me in the fact that I don't speak my own my cultural language. It's given me myself a sense of relief, and I'm very excited for the Mabuhay District and Cultivation Festival, and just in general, like I can't say it very quick, but the Manitoba Filipino Business Council. I'm very excited to see, now that I'm following you guys, like I'm excited to see the impact that you have on the community as being part of the community as well, right? So thank you.
Of course. And you know, I think the Philippine-Canadian experience is one that we just haven't had enough time to unpack. You know, we've been here since the 50s and 60s, but you know, now we're at a point where it's second gen, third gen, you know, like around the corner is the fourth generation of our community that's going to be born. And I was like, oh my gosh, like we have been here for this long, but we have not been able to build just a very visible legacy for our community in a way that is not just, you know, visible, like, you know, we have physical spaces, yes, but we want a space that like the rest of Canada, the rest of North America is going to look at and be like, they're doing really cool stuff here in Manitoba. And we're almost 100,000, if not more than 100,000 Filipino folks in Manitoba.
Nice.
Like what in the world? Like why don't we have a district yet? We don't have this like, so the Mabuhay district being that economic and cultural hub. It really is meant to be a space where everyone feels welcome, whether they're from our community or not. But absolutely speaking to your point, Shelly, about that Philippine-Canadian experience is so different than the first waves of, you know, immigrants that came here. And what it looks like today to be a Philippine-Canadian person, you know, we may not speak the language, we may not be able to cook dinuguan. If we don't, we really should learn how to do it. But
it's amazing.
It is so good. But like there is no shame in that, because that is a lived experience that a lot of us can relate to, and it is never too late to reclaim that part of your identity. And that's really a big part of what the hub is going to do as well. And one other thing that we're really trying to accomplish with the district is unity, which is, you know, it's something that's so important to us, because whether you are Canadian born, you're Philippine born, whether you can speak the language or not, whether you grew up being really proud of your heritage or you're just reconnecting with it today, whatever group or association that you're part of, if you're not part of any of them, that's totally okay. Like there's no wrong identity to have, because this is a community that you can be a part of and like feel really proud and feel really welcomed. Because we want all of those different lived experiences. It's important for us to hear all of that. It's important for this space to represent all of that, because we want to make sure that we are telling the Philippine-Canadian story and making sure that that experience is shared. So we're excited to have business owners like you that are like really thrilled about it, because, you know, it's funny, we have a lot of conversations with our elders. So we're doing this partnership with the Philippine Heritage Council of Manitoba and the Philippine-Canadian Cultural Center of Manitoba, and it was the very first time that we met with some of the titas and the titos. They had said like, oh, we can actually finally stop working so hard, because the next generation, they're taking the reins. They've got it figured out. And I think that was really encouraging, because, you know, I think that's a vote of confidence from them to say that like they actually believe in the work that the next generation is doing, because again, we want to be able to make sure it's as inclusive as possible. So it's an exciting time.
That is exciting. And one of the things that I wanted to mention as well is again, that's very reassuring, like with the approval of the titas and titos, right? Because there's times as a second generation Filipina where I'm like, okay, like how much does my experience or how much does my work give back to my own cultural identity? Right? As someone who's I identify more so as a Canadian, right? So anyways, things like this, it's very reassuring that the work that we're all doing is giving back to a good community, right? Good connection if anything. So with all this being said, if you had one piece of advice for a new business owner, even old business owner, like anyone who wants to get involved in the Filipino Business Council or Mabuhay cultivation, what would you suggest as their first step to take to slowly start to connect with what you guys are doing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And like the first step to connecting with any aspect of the community is just to find somebody that like you love as far as like what they're doing. And it could be anybody. It could be somebody like you, Shelly, who's doing this beautiful, amazing podcast. It could be like a role model that you see in community. Like, you know, I reached out to those role models when I started volunteering. Or it could be somebody that's just literally like one of your close friends and you're like, I really think that you're doing some cool stuff. Like, how are you sharing it?
Right.
Because our community is really big, but also really small. So the connections that you are able to uncover, if you're doing it intentionally, will bring you to that right place. Like, I never reached out or I was never approached by, you know, these two different groups intentionally. I wasn't actively seeking to reconnect with my culture at that time. But, you know, once you start kind of uncovering those opportunities, you're like, this is something that everybody, whether you're a young person, a new entrepreneur, someone that's been doing your own thing but have not connected with your culture in a long time, like you can get so much benefit because it is the best way for you to build community in a way where you don't feel alone.
Yeah.
And that's a huge part of it.
Exactly.
And being an entrepreneur is a very lonely journey.
Such a long journey. Oh my goodness. It's insane.
Yeah, you know, writing business plans at 2 a.m. in the morning and not being able to explain, like, I don't have regular hours, but I'm also never not working.
Preach. That's what I have to say. That's so much, right?
And so being able to be surrounded by people that know what that looks like is really valuable. And, you know, a lot of these groups, whether it be the Manitoba Filipino Business Council, Mabuhay District, PCCM, PCHM, like there's literally over 100 different Philippine groups that you can be a part of. Like these groups want people to come up to them and be like, I want to be a part of that. Like we're always actively recruiting volunteers or members. So I think one of the greatest hurdles that we have to overcome is just putting our whatever maybe insecurities aside, like that sense of like not feeling worthy enough to be part of something, like put all of those fears aside, as hard as it may be, because you would be so surprised like how much people want you to be part of these communities that are built. So exactly. Don't ever be afraid to ask is my piece of advice.
I love it. Okay, so for our audience who do want to get involved, where can they find you? And where can they find you?
Just me in general. I'm on Instagram. If you want to follow me, I do post a lot about my restaurant, about the Manitoba Filipino Business Council, the Mabuhay District, Tito Boy Restaurant on Instagram and Facebook. MFBC, we're on Instagram at MFBCWPG. And then, of course, the Mabuhay District, which is also
following all of it.
Yes, please. Mabuhay District, MFBC Winnipeg, Tito Boy Restaurant, and then Jackie D. Wild if you want to follow any of our journeys.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes, of course.
Awesome. That was our guest, Jackie. Again, I'm Shelly, and I wanted to thank you guys for listening to this podcast, and I'll see you on the next one. How do I end it? I don't know how to end it. Suggestions? What do I say?
I don't know. Close it off.
Oh, maybe this is
This is Jackie.
Okay.
This is Jackie. I'm Shelly. Goodbye.
Okay. I'm shy. I don't know. Shy? Why am I shy when I don't look at the camera? Hold on. Talking to the audience.